Hello and welcome to the webinar. My name is Philip Smith. I'm the Head of News and Content at Gorkana, and I'm delighted to welcome you to a special end-of-year webinar. I know, the time has flown by, hasn't it? But it is December, so naturally today's webinar is called A Year in PR, Lessons from a Tumultuous 2016 and Top PR Trends for the Year Ahead. And this is where we take a look at some of the big moments in PR and media, and with the help of our two PR experts, suggest what you need to look out for and do with 2017 in mind. Looking at a whole year in highlights is a big challenge, so I'm delighted to say that I'm joined by Mandy, founder of the multi-award-winning creative comms agency Tin Man, and Paul Charles, former comms director for Richard Branson and founder of global travel PR firm The PC Agency. Mandy and Paul will share with us their impressions and views of the year and give us some tips for the year ahead. They'll look at some of their favourite campaigns, some of the sort of standouts and the things that have made 2016 a little bit unusual. But before we go much further, let me tell you a little bit about our guests. Mandy is the founder of the agency Tin Man. She founded Tin Man in November 2013. Previously, she was MD of Citizen Relations, and before that, co-founder of Brando. Since Tin Man launched, the agency has secured over 80 industry award wins and shortlists, including Best New Agency, PR Moment 2015, Best Consumer Campaign, CIPR 2015 and 2016, and Gold Sabre winner 2015. Paul Charles. Paul is the founder of the PC Agency. He created the travel PR agency in August this year and represents some of the finest hotels, airlines, tourism boards, cruise lines and tour operators in the world. He previously co-founded agency PCC, was COO at Lewis PR, comms director for Sir Richard Branson at Virgin Atlantic, and comms lead for Eurostar. Paul is a former journalist and having been a BBC TV and radio presenter for 10 years. Mandy, Paul, welcome to the webinar.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello. As I said, 2016 is a big subject. So the way we're going to cover this is with two, and I can assure you, they're very different presentations from Mandy and Paul. They are each going to pick out their highlights and some lowlights in PR from 2016. This includes their favourite campaigns, some key trends, and what we might be looking out for in the year ahead. We will then finish up with a Q&A session for 10-15 minutes or so. So please take the chance to send in your questions on the last 12 months or on what Mandy and Paul had to say, and we'll take time to get them answered. So please help me put Mandy and Paul on the spot. Use the panel at the right-hand side of your screen and just send us in your questions. As I said, we'll leave some time at the end and we'll make sure those get answered. With the presentations, we're going to hear from Mandy first, then we'll hand over to Paul. But before we do that, I just want to mention that Gorkana's very own roundup of 2016 in white paper form is now live, and you can get the white paper at the following URL, marketing.gorkana.com/2016-round-up. So that's 2016-round-up. If you missed it, we'll make a link available in the follow-up email to this webinar, so don't worry about that. But do look out for the Gorkana end-of-year white paper. That's more than enough from me. Mandy, please start your presentation.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everybody. Okay, so I'm going to start with talking very top line, really, about some of the kind of top 5 campaigns that have stood out to me personally this year. The first campaign that I absolutely loved this year was the Citizens Advertising Takeover Service, which was sort of shortened to CATS. What was it? It was actually a Kickstarter campaign that didn't have any brand at all behind it, really. It was designed to get brands and agencies to think differently about the power of their influence and encourage people to support more positive values. It was in partnership with Battersea Cats and Dogs Home, so there was a kind of goodwill thing there too. And how did it work? They actually raised enough money, I think it was about 20-odd grand, so that they could literally take over Clapham Tube Station, replacing all the kind of brand ads with cute pictures of cats. So seemed kind of random, but actually really clever, because obviously cats now inserted to the advertising takeover service, they're very clever. but also cats are one of the most talked about and shared animals online, so people naturally engage with them. But just the message behind it was just really clever, and it was all about trying to get people to think, you know, I don't need another bed, I don't need another phone. Why am I being advertised and branded to all the time? And this stood out. It got loads of coverage that I noticed, and it got so much coverage, and I kept thinking, who's behind this? Who's behind this? And I searched and searched, and I was really happy to find out that actually nobody was behind it. It was just really, really clever. So why do I love it? It's visual, it's creative, it's obviously unexpected. The message is in the medium, so it's really clear. Everyone understood what it was about. Got loads of coverage, and people were intrigued and wanted to find out more. And I think pretty quickly, 30,000 people checked out the website, and you know, job done. My second campaign that I also really loved, which I believe was a Taylor Herring campaign, was Get Fit with Quick Fit. So I don't know if there's any Taylor Herring people out there, but really, really loved this campaign. And what I liked about this is it's just quite humorous and fun and really shareable. So it was based on the insight that Quick Fit technicians had noticed there was a link between their improved strength and fitness due to lifting hefty tyres on a daily basis. Now, whether there is or there isn't, it doesn't really matter, but it's a really sweet bit of insight to create a really nice campaign. So they launched a new tyre-based fitness program post-Christmas, and what I liked about it was obviously topical. Everyone was talking about diets, everyone was obsessed with kale and eating healthily, and then in comes this, which is obviously something a bit different, a bit more fun, and the core brand message was right at the heart of it. It was more than just a stunt, which is what I really liked, because I'm very big on trying to create campaigns that are more than just picture stories and stunts. And they actually created proper classes that ran over a series of weeks. They created great films. They seeded some great picture content, and there was a microsite. So why do I love it? It's funny, so very shareable. Humour is a great emotional connector. You know, Tin Man, we're all about creating campaigns that create emotional connections and make people feel something, and this, you know, made people laugh, so brilliant. People share things that make them smile. So it was clever, it kept the brand at the heart of the activation, and it meant that the consumer message was really clear and focused. So that got a big tick from me. And then obviously I had to put in at least one of my own little gems. This was a campaign called Pulling Power. It was for the Institute of Advanced Driving. And for those of you who don't know, but it has won quite a lot of awards, just put that out there. So people might have heard about this one already, but it was quite a tricky brief. So the brief was to try and encourage young men to drive safely, which is a message that if you told a young guy, you know what, you need to drive safely, they're not going to be remotely interested. So we had to think quite differently about this. They wanted to sell advanced driving courses to young guys. So we did lots of insight and focus groups to look at why and what the motivators would be to get men to engage in safer driving. And obviously one of the things that came up was sex. So basically we decided that if we could prove that bad driving was a 3-point turn-off in dating, it would get them to reconsider driving a bit more safely. So we literally ran a biological experiment to prove that bad driving gives you less sex appeal. Okay, so we partnered with a TV psychologist, somebody called Joe Hemmings, who's on TV, so we had a bit of credibility, and we ran a proper 50-person experiment and did a load of kind of different tests, etc., to sort of prove our formula. And we did some great content. We showed people videos of very, very good-looking men and women driving really well and driving really badly, and we monitored their biological reactions to these videos. So we monitored pulse rates, their blink rate, and they scored these videos and these people on attractiveness before and after. So we actually proved, you know, that actually bad driving, and I'll talk about it, you know, on the next slide, really does put people off. Why do I love this particular campaign? It was a campaign with heart, which is what we're all about. It went straight to the emotional motivator of the audience, which was sex in this case, and suddenly got men to think differently about safe driving. It delivered loads of coverage, but it also financially and commercially really helped the charity, which is the Institute of Advanced Driving, and actually they made £62,000 worth of sign-ups to driving courses. So for them, it was a fantastic success. And here's just, obviously it's mine, so I've got a bit more information on these slides, but you can see just some of the results that came out from our experiments. So bad driving reduced attractiveness by 50%, with women physically turned off by terrible driving, particularly road rage. Overall bad driving increased pulse rates by 20%, showing more, significant levels of stress. And for men, it's all about poor parking skills and taking selfies at the wheel, which were the biggest turn-off. And this happens all the time, which is quite terrifying still. And here's lots of lovely coverage. So you kind of get the gist of why this one has won awards and why it's worked. Okay, so next campaign, I couldn't, select a load of campaigns without crediting this fantastic campaign, the Missing Type campaign for the NHS. I'm sure people know this one, but it still is fantastic and a big tick in my book. The campaign was for NHS blood and transplant during National Blood Week, and it was all about encouraging people to donate particular types of blood where there's shortage. So blood donations from A, O and B, which are the key ones that we're looking for. So very, very clear campaign. It was an integrated campaign, so it was obviously, a big scale, which went across lots of different media channels. But the idea was that they cleverly removed key letters A, O and B to really dramatise the need for this type of blood donation across major media and signage. It's clever, it's visual, obviously it's delivered fantastic results. I mean, it's been awarded goodness knows how many wins across the year and last year, I think. They got over 30,000 donors, 20,000 more than the year before, which is actually one of the reasons why I really thought this was impressive this year, because you've done it once, it's a great campaign, but to do it again and still have those results is really impressive. Loads of uses of the key hashtags, lots of coverage, message was easily translatable to all audience, and one of the biggest award winner in 2016. I think this is my final campaign of the year, and this is a really unusual one, and this is why I wanted to highlight it. I particularly love this campaign because it's so clever. It was called Like My Addiction, and it was for an alcohol addiction charity called Addict Aid, which is actually French, I believe. And it was a campaign that was designed to raise awareness of alcoholism among young people and highlight the difficulty in detecting it amongst young people. It was a purely Instagram-based campaign involving this lady in the picture called Louise. And she suddenly appeared on Instagram. And what was the stats for this? Hang on. She, I think within 2 months, had 50 likes in 2 months. It was a very, very carefully constructed Instagram campaign, posted at certain points throughout the day, etc., where people were going to be, high engagement, etc. And it was just Instagram pictures of this girl having a nice life. But actually, there was a twist, and the twist was that every single photo that was posted was her with a glass of alcohol in her hand. And the scary thing is that no one noticed. You just wouldn't have noticed it. So it was really clever in terms of just sort of highlighting the issue of how hard it is to diagnose this illness. So it was revealed with a great big reveal eventually, and everyone realised. And it was just very clever, it was dramatic, it was effective, and it was totally different, which is why I particularly liked it. And they saw 5 times more traffic to the website, and they got lots of coverage. So for me, that was a really, really impressive campaign. And I believe that's my campaign. And then I suppose, I'm sure we'll talk about this a bit more, but these are my kind of key challenges, I think, for the year ahead. The first one is this ongoing increased focus on data and analytics. More and more we need as PR people to look at how we evaluate the work that we do and the commercial effects it has on our campaigns. So this is something that we look at and take quite seriously as an agency, and I think most agencies will be looking at this in terms of developing mechanics and sophisticated ways of being able to evaluate their work. And then I think, we have a bit of a tough time as PR people, because I think more and more now we have to wear a number of different hats, and it's a matter of always widening our skill set. So, a lot of the briefs now that I see, they're not traditional PR briefs at all. Some of them are actually more SEO or social media led, but they have the PR element as well. So it's, everything from social influencer marketing, etc. Our experience, sort of, and expertise just has to go way beyond PR, and I think that it's not a challenge, it's actually quite exciting, but I would say that's something that agencies need to be aware of and look for in terms of developing for 2017. I believe that's me.
Great. Thank you, Mandy. And thank you for those highlights, particularly. One thing that struck me, actually, as we looked at those sort of 5 campaigns, was they could have happened any year. In terms of the technology, in terms of the things, the ideas and thinking behind them, you know, you've got something that looks at relatively old media like outdoor, and you've got something that, yes, looks at Instagram, but actually that could work on different social media channels. Is that what struck you as well? Is that good ideas work?
Yeah, I think that's it. I think it always comes down to the idea. Something that has to be more than just a picture. You know, there has to be a depth to it. It has to be based on insight. It has to be clever, and it has to have a twist. And most of those campaigns that I've talked about have that. They've always got that, that's the clever bit. And that's the bit that we always have when we come up with ideas and campaigns that really deliver for clients. It's when we have that, we call it a Tin Man twist, the twist. And I think, you know, agencies will all do the same, I'm sure, in their own different sort of guises. But that's what makes them successful. It's about the idea and the twist.
Excellent, and we shall follow up on your thoughts about future trends when we get to the Q&A session. And as I remind everyone, do send in your questions for both Mandy and Paul. And Paul, it's now your turn, so we'd love to hear from you. I'm also fascinated to know what the equivalent of the PC agency twist is, of the Tin Man twist.
I'll get to that later.
I look forward to hearing that. So Paul is, of course, Paul Charles, founder of the PC agency. Paul, please start your presentation.
Thank you very much, Philip, and thanks, Mandy, for great insight there on some fantastic campaigns. I wanted to look at things perhaps a little bit differently by reflecting a bit on certainly the tumultuous is probably an understatement year that we've had in 2016 and some of the trends that we might see for 2017 as well. Undoubtedly, this has been the year you could not have called. If we were sitting here 12 months ago, we would in no way have been able to tell you that Theresa May would be Prime Minister, that Donald Trump would be the President of the United States or President-elect, and that some of the campaigns that you thought were going to be successful would be so. So it's been very, very dramatic for a number of reasons, and I think they've been defined by two things to me: speed and uncertainty. I think 2016 has been the uncertain year. It's been the year you could not have predicted, certainly politically, and then that had knock-on effects for especially clients, but all businesses in other sectors as well. And then from a speed perspective, I think whether it's in-house, whether it's clients, whether it is team members and colleagues, we're all speeding up. Our lives seem to be getting faster, determined by everybody always being on iPhones and Android, and therefore expecting responses much faster than ever. And that in turn has defined how we all behave and how we react or proactively position campaigns. So I'd say those are the two things I'm going to home in on. I think we've seen a new breed of leader emerging, not just politically, but in business as well. And these have been leaders who perhaps are lacking experience, or they bring experience from a different genre or sector. So Theresa May is a good example, as is Donald Trump, in that they themselves bring different experience to the roles that they are playing, which is why we have uncertainty. I think in 2016 we saw some brand giants who we always respected toppled due to their rush to market. And because of the rush to market, perhaps their product quality wasn't as strong as it traditionally has been. So this goes back to the speed point, that very much because we're under pressure to deliver faster, then actually sometimes the ball is dropped and the brands cannot deliver. And Samsung is a classic example of that in 2016, because actually the latest mobile product did not deliver. In fact, it caught fire, and as a result, their own image and their own reputation was burned and tarnished as well. But that's because arguably they were rushing to deliver a fantastic product to compete with the competition, Apple and others. So I think proven communications plans have been turned on their head this year. The predictable, the things we've always been used to, have actually turned out to be very, very different. And then it's been a year where, because of this speed and uncertainty, I think social media has been more prominent. which is great because you've seen social media really come to the fore and perhaps be considered more accurate than in the past. But equally, I'm not convinced social media is delivering on sales and direct sales to clients. It's a nice brand approach. It raises the brand, but does it really force people to buy or expect them to buy? I think the Brexit campaign just has to be mentioned simply because arguably it was the most successful campaign in the UK. The Brexiteers won the debate. They managed to persuade the public, 52% of the public, to vote to leave the EU. So from a campaign perspective, it was very, very strong, and it was strong because it focused on the same messages. It proved that you only have to say the same message or the same three things time and time again, and you'll get your message across to the public. And that's what they did. They stuck to immigration. They stuck to the fact 400 billion pounds would be put back into the economy. They stuck to the message that actually we would be better off outside of Europe. And just those simple messages worked very powerfully. And there were a range of agencies that worked on that campaign, but it was very effective integration of agency thinking. The other thing was, I think, Remain were negative. And this campaign from Remain proved that if you're negative in a campaign, the public don't like it. They only vote in their masses for positivity. So that's a lesson to all of us, that I think if you're doing a campaign, if you just do negative campaigning time and time again, it's not what the British certainly are about. And they're not going to vote for that sort of message. And that's where David Cameron and George Osborne and others who backed Remain went wrong, because they were constantly talking about the downside. And then, of course, there were the strong personalities. Nigel Farage, Michael Gove, Boris Johnson. These personalities won votes because they were strong in their opinions. They got out there, they were convinced they had the right angle, and they spoke from the heart. And I think if you don't speak from the heart in a campaign, you're not going to win over the doubting Thomases. The Brexiteers won over the doubting Thomases because they had strong messages, simple messages, spoken from the heart, and that is always something to do in a good campaign. Then the second political one I wanted to home in on was obviously Donald Trump, and there were so many twists and turns just in the last 3 months in the run-up to the November election that this was impossible to determine. It was impossible to call which way the US were going to vote. And it's ironic that Trump trumped everybody. I mean, this was a Teflon campaign. Nothing really stuck to him. He had the most extraordinary amount of negativity thrown at him, not just from the Clinton campaign, but also from some sections of the media who were clearly unearthing background comments and videos that he had said. And whether you agree with them or not, it didn't stick. And that is a tribute to his campaign. And again, this turned out to be the most successful campaign in the US for that reason that he was voted, for the reason that he was voted in. Video evidence did not prove fatal. The FBI clearly talking about Hillary Clinton's emails was a major distractor in the campaign as well, which enabled Trump to win over his doubters. This is a man who has no political experience whatsoever. He's run businesses, some successfully, some unsuccessfully, but he has an openness and a flavor and a tone that is very different to what the people of America have heard before. So he was able to conduct a very successful campaign based on simplicity, on positivity, and indeed based on a refreshing change, which is what America wanted to hear. So this is a classic campaign that peaked at the right moment. The irony now is that, certainly as president-elect, Donald Trump is running his campaign through Twitter. So he is running his campaign based on no press releases, no press conferences, purely announcing things via his The Real Donald Twitter channel. And this has huge implications, certainly for corporate communicators everywhere, and arguably consumer campaigns. Trump is proving that he can announce something in under 140 characters. Trump is proving that you don't need a press conference or press release to get your message across. And Trump is proving that actually you can appeal to the masses and frustrate comms teams, especially in America, in one simple flick of the tweet. It's interesting, Boeing last week, he said cancel contract. He released a tweet saying cancel contract with Boeing. Boeing, that came out of the blue. Boeing wouldn't have known. How do you react as a corporate communicator when the president-elect of the United States tells you what he's doing through Twitter? There's no advance warning. How do you respond to that? And this is what corporate communicators in the future are going to have to deal with. The Heathrow campaign is a big one in the transport sector. It's been going on for so long, the third runway debate, that a lot of people just perhaps switched off, so it had to be reignited on several occasions. This is a campaign that lost energy because of constant government indecision, and then, of course, the change in leadership at the Conservatives. So the third runway campaign has actually cost Heathrow and Gatwick a lot more than they would have expected. But it's been a challenge for the PR agencies involved as well as the in-house teams, simply because they never knew when the decision was coming. So this is a campaign that had no end point. This is a campaign that you sort of looked at and you thought, well, I know what the individual arguments are, but is anyone ever going to make a decision? The debate undoubtedly was best captured, I think, by Gatwick, who won the statistics argument. It made sense that Gatwick should have a second runway. So I'm not convinced that Heathrow won the debate about whether they should have a third runway, even though that was the natural outcome, because Heathrow is a bigger hub. Heathrow is a good business and leisure hub, and therefore it made sense for a third runway to be the actual outcome. But the problem is they're going to have to go on fighting. This campaign isn't over. So although the government announced their preference for Heathrow, actually it's highly likely there's going to be an appeal. It's highly likely that this debate will have to go on for another 5 to 10 years before any real outcome is made. And so this is the campaign that goes on, giving to all of us in terms of when it will end. It's won the battle, but it hasn't won the war. My favorite campaign of the year was Toblerone, a very, very clever campaign, overturning years of tradition. Decades of how Toblerone has looked were turned on their head by the very fact that they changed the design. The product got a little bit bigger in between each Toblerone block. And this is a fantastic image-led campaign that is so simple because it's the product. This is a fantastic way to promote yourself. You don't need any other imagery apart from your own product directly in the campaign itself. This was a return, I would say, to very classic PR campaign-wise. Create a debate simply by saying you're going to change a decades-old product. And that's what they did. As a result, it was very simple. We're going to make the gap bigger between the two blocks. We're going to do it from a particular date, and whether you like Toblerone or not, that's going to happen. They had strong imagery because it was simply the Toblerone itself. They managed to get fantastic third-party comment from journalists, commenting, for example, that they could use the new design as desk tidy. It was perfect in terms of getting endorsement. So a very, very clever campaign, because it showed that you can take an existing product, use the existing imagery, tweak it a bit with the new product, and still get people on your side. There was very little negativity about that change. So some trends perhaps from 2016 and things to look forward to 2017. Well, clearly uncertainty crept in. So because it crept into politics, it's actually crept in to business as well, and it's crept in, I think, into our very daily lives. Because we don't know the outcome of Brexit yet, because we don't know the impact on Europe, because we don't know the impact from the Trump presidency in his early days, how will he appeal to people, that's bred uncertainty elsewhere as companies look to make decisions. So I think for 2017, it's going to be bold companies that take the initiative and make decisions based on perhaps a lot of the outcomes they don't know yet. I don't think consolidation was as strong as it could have been in 2016. I think there will be more consolidation in the PR sector in 2017, simply because of the exchange rate fluctuations. I think the fact that the pound has weakened means that many British companies are looking more attractive and ripe potentially for takeovers by agencies, larger agencies based overseas in the US or in Europe. I think the financial PR sector is in turmoil at the moment because of the uncertainty created by Brexit. A lot of the large institutions are not sure whether they're going to be moving people out of London. All the indications are they will be moving more people to Paris potentially, Frankfurt and to Dublin. As a result, financial PR is in a very difficult place at the moment, and I think we'll have a difficult 2017. Consumer PR, as ever, I think fees are under the spotlight. Gone are the days when you had £30,000 to £40,000 a month fees in consumer PR on retainer. I think they're changing dramatically, and consumer businesses are realizing that they need to reduce their budgets and still potentially get the same amount of coverage. For 2017, I think one of the hardest things will still be finding the best people. Finding good quality people in certainly in-house and in agencies is tougher than ever. Simply because I think there's a new generation who are growing up with social media more than traditional PR perhaps, and so finding good people is going to be at the top of the radar for many agency owners and in-house teams. And then I think boutique agencies will get stronger. I think there is a demand for small is beautiful, big isn't beautiful. I think there's a demand for agencies who are smaller, who may offer more quality account servicing. And that will be an interesting change during 2017 as well, perhaps a switch by a lot of big brands to smaller boutique agencies who can deliver equally as well as a large communications team in a big agency. So I think those are likely to be the trends going into next year. So I think we're going to move on to any questions, and Philip is going to oversee that.
Great. Thank you, Paul. And actually, I'm going to start with a question for both of our guests, because what you both did extremely well was highlight some special campaigns from the year and things that had worked really well. And I was interested, actually, is there anything that either of you would say, oh, I'd really like that from your presentation? So, Mandy, if I start with you, was there any campaign that Paul picked on that you thought, actually, I thought that was really well done, or even maybe not? I mean,
the Toblerone. I mean, I also thought the Toblerone campaign was clever because what it also did was it created lots of people using it in different ways. So it kind of got traction on social, didn't it? Because there were lots. If I remember rightly, there were lots of different people using it for various different things. So I thought that was quite clever.
It was. Yeah. I think it was different as well because Toblerone is one of those brands that traditionally you wouldn't expect to say very much.
Yeah.
Because
exactly.
certainly their core product is so well known, does very well. They don't need to go out there and say a huge amount. So when they say something, it creates a massive traction, I think.
Also, usually when those FMCG brands change their product, they're usually slated for going smaller for the same price. So there's always that kind of value issue. Whereas this was kind of slightly different. It's getting bigger, so it's quite clever.
It moves the debate in a different direction.
Yeah.
And what about you, Paul? Because you made a really interesting point about positivity, and actually thinking back, and you may contradict this, Mandy, but a lot of your campaigns that you picked on were very positive. So if you think about the challenge of driving and saying actually that enhances your appeal by being a better driver.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything negative about putting loads of pictures of cats up everywhere.
Yeah.
But I was wondering, I mean, the first question, Paul, was there anything out of the 5 campaigns that Mandy highlighted that you would...
It was Quick Fit, actually, that I thought was really good, because Quick Fit, you would expect to always see a campaign around a tyre being changed or a car being fixed. But actually to showcase how the Quick Fit teams get fitter and they're actually very strong is something very different, and also nods to health and wellness. And I think that's a big sector to that's going to be developed over the next few years, obviously, as people want healthier lives and wellness enters their lives, more wellness enters it. And I think that was a great campaign from that perspective, because it showed that actually we can take a take a product, and you can do something very different with it that isn't the traditional, isn't the expected. So yeah, Quick Fit was the one for me.
Great. Now, we've got lots of questions flooding in. I would certainly say, though, that we could handle a couple more. So if you've got a question for Paul and Mandy, please do send it in. We've got a good 10, 15 minutes or so we'll try and tackle them all. The first one, though, that I can see is about social media, and maybe the emphasis of social media in the future. I think you both commented on the power of social media in different ways. And Mandy, if I come to you first, this question says, how much focus should be put on social media when planning big 2017 campaigns? And I guess in the background to that is more or less focus than 2016.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot. I think it's got to be key to all the ideas that agencies come up with, because things have to do more than the sum of their parts now. So as we were talking about before, it's about the idea, but that idea has to work on social, has to work across digital channels, has to work across the press. So I think, well, from our perspective as an agency, we never look at an idea without looking at how it works through social. It's just part of the course now. I mean, it's not even like a separate thing. You know, sometimes the ideas are just purely digitally led and, you know, socially operated, but it's part of the course. It has to be integrated from the beginning.
And Paul, what's your take on that? Do you think that it's becoming more and more important?
I do, and Mandy's absolutely right. It's more integrated in campaign pitches and planning these days. It's interesting from the travel side. If you take Instagram, which is probably the most popular channel in the travel sphere, a lot of it is about whether you're on a nice beach or whether you have got sunshine or whether you're taking a nice sunset. I'm not convinced there's a huge amount of depth to what we see on certainly the newer channels like Instagram. I think it's a fantastic channel, no doubt about it. It's a good way of getting instant recognition. But is there any long-lasting depth to it, and does it build a brand? And I think it's almost like the modern equivalent of fish and chip paper wrapping, really. It's sort of here today, you see this fantastic picture, but then you've forgotten about it within 2 days. So I just wonder how much it's going to deliver, as I said, sales, and that's what a lot of comms chiefs look for, and marketing chiefs. They're looking for ROI. So is a social media channel delivering the ROI? I absolutely think it does deliver from a brand ROI. It does deliver in terms of your visibility. I'm not overly convinced the case is made yet that it's delivering ROI in terms of bottom line.
I think it probably does with fashion brands, actually.
Yeah.
Because I think with fashion brands, you click through, you buy, and you see it. So
Yeah.
I think with those kind of Instagram campaigns, it does.
Yeah.
It does. But it's certain types. And I think, you know, if you look at the younger generation, I sound really old saying that, but I think about, you know, my kids, and, you know, that's what they're on all the time.
Yeah.
So it just depends on what brand you're looking at. You know, if you're looking at a youth-orientated brand, Instagram's key.
Yeah.
It's key.
Yeah.
As is Snapchat now, and you know, all of those.
Whilst we're on the subject of types of media, we've got an interesting question, which Paul, I'll come to you first on this one, and it's about the wider digital picture, but really it's also talking about other media, and this question is: digital is becoming so important. Do you think print media is becoming less popular? And Paul, you did mention how, particularly with the talent question, it's hard to find, or harder to find, people with the traditional PR skills. And that also probably points at the print media question.
Yeah, it's a really good question to ask. I think print media is still popular in certain areas. Magazines, for example, undoubtedly are having an all right time. I wouldn't say an amazing time, but they're having a pretty good time with circulations rising in some of the more popular magazines, because they're able to deliver great imagery to go with the content. and I think anyone that can deliver great imagery in media circles is going to be more popular. And that's the problem the newspapers have had. They haven't necessarily kept up with the fantastic imagery you see in magazines. So that's why they've gone online and put all their great imagery resource into online. It's interesting to see the Times, for example, now have a lot more imagery than they ever did. Simple stories just with one picture, more so than ever. So they're responding to it. But I think print media. I'm not someone who's going to say print media will die. It won't die. There is going to be a role for both papers and for magazines. But I think they've got to adapt by understanding that imagery is key. And if you don't have the best imagery, that's when you will disappear actually, and end up just online or not around at all.
We've got a slight twist on that question that's come in. So I think, Mandy, I'll ask this next question to you first and then see if Paul's got a follow-up, because it does mention Paul as well. So the question is, hello, Louisa here from You Agency. Hello, Louisa. I just wanted to put some discussion how 2016 has panned out in terms of press. In the press itself, we've seen the independent move to online only and the rise and fall of a new print paper, The New Day. Do you have any predictions for how media will continue to develop and change with the fast-paced times Paul mentioned? So, Mandy, what do you see in changes in media?
I mean, I kind of probably, I feel a bit more strongly about the fact that I think print media will slow down a lot. I do. I mean, as in that question, it's kind of, the facts are there. You know, a paper launched and died pretty quickly. You know, we have clients now who just aren't bothered about print coverage. They want to be on the Daily Mail online, or they want to be on the Eye or whatever, you know, because people are consuming content in a totally different way now. And apart from sitting on the tube and watching people read papers, people just don't read that much physical print media anymore. They consume everything on their phones or on their iPads or on their laptops. So, you know, I don't know how it's going to go, but I would say that, you know, physical print media will be in a very different place to where it is now in the next 2 years.
I think you'll always have a core of print media, and you know, whether that's newspapers, magazines, you'll have a core. The big brands, the really big brands that have been around decades will survive, and because they're adapting, and they know it. They know they need to adapt, but they will adapt. I think you will see one or two more larger outlets probably disappear and just go online. I'm sure that trend will continue, but there'll be a core that will survive. So it's not the death of the industry, far from it. But they've got to adapt. Therefore, that puts challenges onto editors and onto some of the departmental teams that they've got to provide more fulfilling content, which in turn helps us as agencies and in-house professionals to actually deliver more engaging content to them. So I think it should work.
Shorter, sort of snackable content as well. I think people, as you're saying about being quick, people just, everything's so quick. They want immediate responses. You know, we live in this digital, fast-paced, moving, ridiculous speed of life really now. So, you know, big text-heavy features, just they might go in there. Do they get read? I don't know, because people don't consume that level of content now. It's much more, as you say, image-led, video-led. You know, every bit of kind of PR we do, we'll do live content with it always, because it tells a story, and people will probably watch that over the text around it. You know, it's just the way people consume media.
We've got another question which sort of comes on the back of that, about the people who create content. So I think, Paul, it's your turn to come first on this, so we'll come to you first on this. Do you think that bloggers and social influencers are just as important nowadays as journalists and the press when promoting your brand or client?
$1 million question. Some of them are, the majority are not. There is a growing, strong group of bloggers and social influencers. There's no doubt. They're growing in stature. But the problem is there's a whole tail of people who say they're social influencers who are giving the sector a bad name. So especially in the travel space, they're contacting us every day saying, oh, I'm a top blogger, I'm a top influencer, you know, I've got 1,500 followers on Twitter, therefore I should be allowed to stay in a hotel for one night free of charge. They're not doing the industry any favours whatsoever. So there's a role for the dynamic, for the more innovative, and perhaps for those that have been around longer. But there are some that are very influential, and some that actually clients ask for or say, can they come and stay? But undoubtedly, in our sector, there's no doubt the traditional media is still hugely influential, more influential.
Mandy, I'm hoping you'll say exactly the opposite. But what's your view? Are bloggers and social influencers, are they just as important as journalists?
Yeah, I think they are sometimes. I think it depends on the brand, because if you're talking about a kind of cool fashion brand, bloggers and influencers are key, and brands get launched on that. Adidas, etc. Those sort of brands that big on kind of influencers and bloggers. I think it just depends on the brand, but I think it has to be part of a mix. It's a bit of everything. You can't, I wouldn't feel comfortable unless it was a specific kind of brief or specific kind of brand where we would just do bloggers and influencers. It has to be part of a bigger approach.
You both brought up the subject of talent and the skills that people need and so on, but this is actually a question directed at Mandy. So we'll start with you on this, Mandy, and it says, question for Mandy. As you say, client briefs are changing away from traditional PR, talking about how agencies need to respond to this. What do you think HR managers need to be looking for in new talent in order to meet these requirements? Effectively, what do you think is or will be the new PR agency skill set?
Oh, good question. That is $1 million question. I think more and more, well, from my perspective, we look for people with a real mix of skills, both traditional and digital, but also a kind of culturally aware kind of person, which isn't, a kind of a skill necessarily you put on your CV, but it brings in different experiences that create campaigns and ideas that live across different types of media. Because, as I sort of said in that last slide, we need to wear lots of different hats in PR now. So coming in and saying, I'm really good at media relations, obviously that's the core, that's brilliant. If you've got that skill, you can do a number of different things. But you need to be great at media relations across different channels, and you have to understand how to create news and create content in a way that people want to share it. And that's kind of the skill set. So I think skill set is a really difficult one, and often it's about a person rather than ticking boxes on a skill set. Do you know what I mean? So it's quite hard to write down on a list, but they have to understand traditional, they have to be digitally savvy, they have to understand how to do, social campaigns, etc. But fundamentally, they have to understand what is a great idea, and what is going to turn that idea into news and content.
Do you find those people in different places?
Yeah, we do. I think that's good as well. I think it's, we always look for people who have got great kind of pedigree in terms of agencies and in-house roles and that kind of thing, but more and more we're looking at people from different disciplines. Maybe they've worked at a digital agency, maybe they've worked at an above-the-line agency. Coming with different skill sets and different experiences is really key, because it's just all about the idea. The boundaries and it's all blurred now, so you need that expertise.
I think the teams of the future, they need to change their CVs. I think CVs should be different. I think we're moving on. We're in a different world now where CVs have got to reflect things that are a little more exciting and dynamic than the traditional CV that we get through daily. I want to see a CV initially that's going to attract my attention that has somebody proving they're dynamic, they're creative, they're accurate, and they're speedy. And all of those things are at the top of our list for hiring people. Because if they haven't got those things, then really PR's not for them. They need to be in another sector and go and work in banking or something else.
We have a question actually about the type of PR you do yourselves, or rather the type of businesses that you've both founded and run. And this is the idea of, almost PRing itself. So the question is, I'm just trying to find it here. It is, thanks for all the presentations. I really enjoyed it, but but I was wondering if you could give me your opinion in regards to how the small PR agencies could stand out more, making PR for PR. Thanks. So, Paul, shall we start with you? How do smaller PR agencies or small PR agencies stand out more?
Well, Mandy's doing a great job of it by winning, her and her team winning lots of awards. So it's a fantastic, impressive achievement, and I think that is a fundamental. If you can win awards as a small agency, it shows your campaigns are well regarded and effective. And so she's done it. So perhaps I'm answering Mandy's answer, or giving Mandy's answer. But I think the other things are to have a great network. So as a small agency owner, you need to be out there networking. Relationships are built over years, not just months. So you've got to keep those relationships and those networks up. I think employing the right people is really important, especially in a small team, because there's generally no office politics in a small team, but if something goes wrong, then it can affect the whole office. So it's really important to have the right people who believe in your own vision and your passion and what you're trying to do. And I think the final thing is probably, as a small agency, you need to prove that you are extremely dynamic. You've got to keep on your toes. And the small agencies that don't do that are the ones that die quickly.
Yeah. Mandy.
Yeah, all of that.
Full set scene for you.
All of that. I mean, obviously we do take awards seriously. Obviously it makes everyone feel good when you win awards, but really it was a conscious thing, because we wanted to prove that our work worked, basically, and our campaigns delivered. Because really you're only as good as your last piece of work, in a way. So if you want to create an impact quickly as a small agency, you have to do amazing work. So amazing work will win awards, and it's almost that simple. It's not simple to create amazing work, but it's that approach, and that's how we have created a name for ourselves and done our PR through the work that we do. And also from that comes word of mouth. So if you do good work, whether you win an award for it or not, clients recommend you. So most of our work is through recommendation and awards.
Okay. Now, I think we've got time to tackle two more questions. One is very specific. Again, talks about charities, and something, Mandy, you particularly highlighted it as one of your sort of favourite campaigns, which is interesting to hear about the driving campaign. Any advice for how a small charity can create a big impact with very little budget?
That little nugget of a question that we get asked a lot as an agency. Well, that driving campaign was not a big budget at all. It's just about doing something unexpected almost. I mean, that's why that worked, really. It's almost basing a campaign on a human truth. So the human truth for that campaign was, young guys tend to think they're great drivers. Well, the reality is they're not. That's what we knew. But it's just, it's understanding what is going to motivate change in that audience. You have to understand your audience. You don't have to do anything big, wow, really expensive. You just have to do something creative and clever that is right for that audience. And that's what that campaign is. Without knowing what the brief is, I can't give you the idea here and now, but there are lots of ways to do it. It's just understanding who you're talking to and doing something unexpected, I would say.
I would say don't have as your starting point something that frankly has been done before, or that is perhaps perceived as a bit fluffy PR, old style PR. Have a strong news story. That's partly my journalistic background thinking, but if you're a small charity, you've got to have cut through a strong news story. Otherwise the desks, new and old, traditional and social, won't touch that sort of story. So have a strong news line that your charity would be recognised for, would be my advice.
I would say charities over other brands tend to do better in the media anyway, because
there's goodwill.
It's goodwill,
yeah.
And you're not promoting another chocolate bar. So generally the charities that we work on they are low. They have been low budget, obviously. We've done a number of charity campaigns that have won a lot of awards. Not only that driving one, we did one for Streetlink, which was a housing charity that was also low budget, but creating something visual works quite well in terms of things that we tend to look at for charities.
Great, some excellent practical advice there. Now, I want to finish with a final question. I'm going to limit you both to an answer of a minute or less, And I also want this to be a very positive answer, considering that we're looking forward to 2017, looking back on 2016. And the question is very straightforward. Are you optimistic about the future of PR? I'm going to add my own question to that, which is, and why? So assuming your answer is yes, but please, if it's not, I think this is the forum in which to confess you're not optimistic about the future. So Paul, I'm going to start with you, and then Mandy, I'm going to give you the final word. So Paul, are you optimistic about the future of PR? And if so, why?
I am very optimistic about the future of PR. I think it's a fantastic sector to work in, and everybody that works in it generally has a great time. I'm optimistic for a number of reasons. One, I think it's adapting. I think it is changing, and it needs to change along with clients changing themselves. So it's exciting because it's fluid. I think I'm very optimistic because there are some terrific people that work in the sector, highly creative, who win awards, who are fun, and who are expert at telling a message and telling a story. And that I find invigorating, not just personally, but for my team as well. And I think finally, I'm very optimistic simply because PR has been around for decades. It's needed. You need a reputation manager of some kind out there, whether it's in-house or agency. We are protecting or developing reputations, and that will always be needed.
Excellent. Thank you, Mandy. Are you optimistic about the future of PR, and why?
I am. I'm super optimistic about the future of PR. I think PR, actually over and above other marketing disciplines, has so much power at the moment, because as a nation and as the world, we are branded to all the time, non-stop, hundreds of times a day. And actually, what PR does is it's authentic. It's word of mouth. That's basically what it is. It's about people telling other people how good things are. That's kind of in a nutshell what it is. So it's believable, it's authentic, and it means something. So I think as an industry, more and more people are going to choose PR as a marketing discipline. But I agree with you, Paul. We have to be adaptable, and we have to move with the times, and PR will start meaning a lot more things than just traditional print coverage.
Great, thank you, and thank you for finishing that on such a positive note. I'm afraid that's all we've got time for now, but thank you everyone who's been sending in your questions, and thanks everyone for listening in. Gorkana webinars are back in January. We have a special webinar on the new form of influencer marketing and the rise of micro-influencers. So remember to look out for that, and remember to look out for our 2016 white paper, which has highlights of and trends to look out for in 2017 as well. That's all from us, but I want to finish with two big thank yous. A very big thank you to Mandy and Paul for their presentations, expertise and insight today, and frankly for taking on the challenge of all those questions, which were incredibly challenging and diverse. So thank you, Mandy, thank you, Paul, but of course, thank you to everyone who sent in those questions, and actually thank you to all of you for listening in and taking part in today's webinar. See you next time. The webinar is now over.